Well, first of all, good afternoon. Now, we got to try that one more time. That wasn't enthusiastic. I heard you all were enthusiastic. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Great. Well, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. It's my pleasure in being here. I'm just thankful for the great number of folks that are interested in this topic. What I hope to do is bring some of the expertise that we in our firm have developed over 31 years and really brought it down to what are the key components to finish well. And what you have in front of you is a little bit of that information. First of all, before I begin, I know we have more people than what we expected. If there are any folks that have just a little bit of housekeeping, two of these or could share, because some of you didn't get them, we'll make sure and try and get some to you. But maybe you could hold it up if there's an extra one out there. And Tim and Adam, if you could, thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. So, and if you can share, because then so once we do that, and if you could pass one over, anybody else? Great. And then once we do that, I'm going to ask those that didn't get one to hold up their hand. Okay? And we'll see if we can. It's always tough when you do this. I have one for the other side. Well, you know what? All the overheads are up here. And if you didn't get one, please feel free to leave your name and contact information, maybe your address with either one of my associates, Adam Jordan or Tim Kimmel. Well, a little bit of background. Barbara did a great job of talking about what our background is, and just by way of introduction, so you know who's up here speaking as well. We founded the firm 31 years ago in 1987 with the idea of one focus, and that one focus was helping folks as they near retirement and throughout retirement. So we have a suite of services that in essence focuses on those that are age 60 and over and their life planning. We've got 4 certified financial planners on our team. The gentleman has a law degree, and the whole focus is education first. In that process, as Barbara alluded to, we also developed an corporate education program that I taught at a Fortune 500 company, the Boeing company down the street, for about, from 1987 to 2008, so about 21 years. Just by a show of hands to help me know how many are clients of ours or have attended one of our classes many years ago? Great, thank you very much, I appreciate that. As we talk about finishing well, let me direct you to the handout first of all, because those that have them, let me tell you what you've got in front of you. First of all, an outline of all of the slides we have right in front of you on this side, so please feel free to follow along, take notes as you'd like to. Part of what my objective is also is to provide some resources and information. So on the left side, and this is, by the way, just what we talk about with our clients too, or just what we talk about our clients, or talk to our clients about. On the left side, you've got a couple of handouts that our clientele have found very interesting and helpful. Essential legal matters. Many of you are looking at either you're midway through your estate planning process or thinking about this, maybe you're all the way through, maybe you haven't begun. But some of the common questions that we see are, for example, what is an executor and what are his or her responsibilities? Where should I keep my will? What's a trust? What types of trusts are there? How do I name a trustee? What's a power of attorney? This contains all of that. So it's designed a very easy to read document. Also, another helpful document that we have found our clients appreciate is once a death occurs, what do you do? So we have a document, it's called After a Death Occurs, a Checklist. This is what we send out to every person who unfortunately loses a spouse or loses a loved one. And then we have executor duties checklists. By a show of hands, how many have been executors for a spouse or loved one or friend at one time or another? Look around you, guys. Look around you. So what I'm going to suggest to you is what we want to help you do is get prepared. If you haven't been there, get you prepared to what you need to expect. And if you have been there, hopefully what this will do is give you a guide in the future. So that's what you have in front of you. What I'd like you to do, though, if you could, is pull out that handout on the left side. And as you're doing that, let me see. There we go. It's on the right side? Right side. If you're looking at the opposite, right side. By the way, I'm joined by my team members and associates. These are principals of our firm, Tim Kimmel, Adam Jordan. So if questions come up as you leave, feel free to talk with them as well. But let me ask a question to you. And by the way, I like involvement and engagement. So this was about paperwork, but I'm going to go one step further. When I ask you, what does it mean to end well or finish well? Think about that. Question? Yeah, please feel free. Who would like to start? Yes, sir.
Takes care of all the details so your relatives don't have to come up with it all.
Thank you. Takes care of all the details so our relatives don't have to come up with it all. Great. Anybody else? Who else? Yes, ma'am.
Same idea, but be at peace with how.
Perfect. So same idea, but then be at peace. So it's about peace as well. Excellent. Who else?
On your own terms.
Very good. On your own terms. You have chosen to come to Covenant Shores. By the way, we have clients here. We have clients in other continuing care retirement communities. The reason why most of you have chosen here, I believe, is to be at peace, to know that you've got the care that you need and not have to worry about the details. You can do the same thing as you finish well. You've begun that process by simply making this choice. What else? When I say ending well or finishing well, what comes to mind? What else? Yes, ma'am.
My children are congruent with what I want.
Wow. Did you hear that? My children are congruent about what I want. We're going to talk about how you can take some steps to make that happen too. What else comes to mind? Yes, ma'am.
You have made the decisions and recorded them of whether you want to be resuscitated or not.
Great. So you heard a little about that last session. You made the decisions and recorded them about whether you want to be resuscitated or not. See, a lot of it comes down to the control that you want to have to free up your loved ones from having to make those decisions and the burden perhaps that might involve. One more. Anybody else? Well, I think you've covered it all. You know, as we think about all of that, let me talk about our objectives for today. First objective is to talk about the 10 essentials to finish well. And these, by the way, are 10 essentials that we've gathered over 30 years of working with clients. And what works and what doesn't work. I hope to share those with you. I'll give you some client examples and some insights that hopefully will help you arrive at some action items that maybe help you can further those objectives that we've been talking about. We provide some helpful information and resources. You know, what's also critical that I found, when I attend a class or a seminar, I might find the information really helpful, and I walk out and I think, boy, that was great. Hopefully you think that this time too. But you know what's crucial? What do you see up there? Pardon me?
You gotta go do it.
Got to go do it. Thank you. So I want to empower you to take action. And action's going to be in several ways. We're going to provide a checklist for you of the 10 essentials. You can check it off when you've done it. There's also space to do action items as well, and that's going to be important as well. When I finish on time, we've allowed, I know some of you might have thought, I know Tim and I are going to talk. The whole session is about an hour and a half, so hopefully you can kind of attend for that length of time. I'll be speaking, and Tim is going to come up afterwards as well. There's two Tims in the group, the other Tim. I want you to participate. Now, participation is in two ways. First of all, I'm going to ask you questions. What I found also as an instructor, I love to get involved, and because that's how you're going to help understand it as well. And then please feel free to ask me questions. I'll pause at certain points, call for questions. Please ask a question. There'll be some time at the end to do that as well. So participation is crucial. And I like to have fun too. So that's going to be important as well. But you know, as we think about this whole area, the first word that might come to mind to a lot of you is what you see on the board. You see those terms, and you see the word at the top, confusion, probate, trust, avoid, irrevocable. Let me tell you a story. And when I thought about this as I was preparing for my talk today, a story came to mind and was about a gentleman, very wealthy gentleman, who lived high on top of a mountain. And he had a palatial estate, big Olympic-sized swimming pool, and he was known for his fabulous poolside parties. Now, one night, at one of his parties when his guests were all surrounding the pool, having a good time. The host stood up and made this announcement. He said, look inside the pool. Inside the pool were 12 live alligators. Yeah, I was right. But then the guests were surprised to hear the host stand up in a loud voice and say this: to anyone brave enough to swim the length of the pool and arrive on the other side unharmed, I'll give them their choice. Either $100,000 or an all-expense paid trip around the world. You can imagine there was complete silence. And then the guests heard this splash. And they saw this person going hand over hand as quick as they can all across the pool. They arrived at the other side unharmed, and he pulled himself up from the edge of the pool. The host ran over and said, sir, I don't believe it. I didn't expect anyone to do it, but you swam the pool length. You've got your choice. Still out of breath. You've got your choice, $100,000 in cash or an all-expense paid trip around the world. Still out of breath, the gentleman who swam across the pool said, you know, I appreciate that offer, but I just want to have the answer to one question. He said, what's that? And the question was, who pushed me in the pool? Now, for a lot of you, you might think you've been pushed in the pool when we talk about ending well, because you've heard about some of those terms, and they're confusing. So what I hope to do with what you're going to hear today is recognize the alligators in the pool, but recognize that these can be safe stepping stones to navigate to the other side of the pool. Those are our 10 essentials. So think about that in your mind. We're going to talk about those 10 essentials, and this is where we're headed. These are the 10, guys. This is meant to be a checklist. We're going to go through each one individually, and I'll just briefly go over this, and we'll go into each one individually. One is document. And by the way, these are the 10 that we've learned over the last 30 years that are going to be helpful to our clients in finishing well. Document your personal information. Now, you can kind of, in your mind's eye, see where you are with each of these. But hopefully at the end, you can check the box, yes, I've done it, or I have more work to do. So document your personal information. Create or review your estate documents. Consider charitable desires. List your assets and liabilities. Verify your beneficiaries. Understand ownership arrangements. Identify the location of important documents. Review suitability of key individuals. Prepare your family love letter. And name your trusted advisors. Then you know at the end where it says your next step? Any good class, remember when we went to school, has, what do you take home to do when you're done with the class? What's it called? Homework. So I'm going to assign you some homework too. It's called your next steps. So let's go ahead and dig into this a little bit. And first of all, let's talk about your personal information. Now, you that have been executors, you know the task you have to go through, and that's gather all this information together. So I'm going to give you a couple of phrases. One phrase, when I talk about personal information, that means you can see what's on the board. It means your financial account numbers, who they're with, contact information, account numbers. It means any online accounts. In today's environment, we may have LinkedIn, we might have Facebook, we might have online accounts in our bank bill paying service. Certainly the passwords. Employee ID numbers. We work a lot with Boeing, and when someone passes away, we have what's called an estate transition specialist on our team. He's a CFP and an attorney. He gathers information from our clients. He works with the attorney, but one thing he does is initiate a call to his former employer, or to the former employer of the deceased. At Boeing, for you that have retired from Boeing, you know, there's a BEMS ID, there's a password. So we know all about that process. So it's important to have that information so your executor, whoever they're working with on their own or with an advisor, can access that and make this process as easy as possible. But let me give you the 5 words. If you don't take anything away from this slide, take away 5 words about this slide. And those 5 words are: one place, easy to find. Very simple. Very simple. Well, your estate documents. Now, as a disclaimer, I'm not an attorney. This is meant for information and education only. We suggest you look at any detailed information that pertains to you with your trusted advisors. So think about the 5 elements of a properly designed estate plan. Now, I won't go into the details here because I understand last time there was some information on a healthcare directive, but let me go into a life support directive. But let me talk about a couple of areas here that we see pitfalls in our client's situation, and we have to help them with that. Is you want to be sure for your financial power of attorney. Remember, the financial power of attorney is simply a legal document that appoints a financial agent to act in your behalf. Could be a son, could be a daughter. By the way, if you have an IRA account, you better appoint your spouse if you have a spouse. Because you have an IRA account, he or she can't access that. So remember that. So durable power of attorney, and that simply means make sure you've got the right agent appointed, and also that it can be certain triggers, triggering events they're called. What triggers that durable power? The durable power simply means it's durable beyond your capacity. Power of attorney simply means you're giving authority to someone else to make the decisions on your behalf. And then durable power means it continues on after your incapacity. So think about that. If it's something you need to review in your own case, that would be an action item you might want to take. If it's something you don't have, you might want to consider that as well. So when you think about a will, and by the way, by a show of hands, how many have a will? Okay. How many have looked at it in the last 10 years? Wow, you guys are great. How many feel that there is something in their will that they want to change that they haven't changed yet? Okay, a few people there. So one of the action items you might want to take away from this is use this as a prompting to do that. One of the areas that we see clients ask us is, when do I need to look at the will? When do I need to change it? Let me give you an acronym. The acronym is DEEP. It's not deep. It's the acronym DEAP. So when any of these four areas change, you should consider reviewing your will. D stands for your desires. When your desires change, when you say, boy, I want to have a certain aspect of your estate go one place or the other, or other issues come up, it's your desire. That's the D. E is events, death of a spouse. One event might be the tax law changes if it changes. So events, so DE. A stands for assets. When your assets change, a sudden inheritance or assets change, you should consider reviewing your will. And P is the people. So D is desire, your desire. E is events, A is assets, P is people. If the people change, the question I have, and this is a rhetorical question, what is closest to your heart right now? You can say your family, absolutely. Each other, absolutely. Are there organizations? Are there causes? Perhaps a school? Is there a way at this point in life that you'd love to have part of what that reflection might be carry on after your death? If so, we're talking about causes, we're talking about ministries, organizations, universities, church certainly. So part of what you'd want to consider, remember this is step number 3 in our 10-step process, is consider that, and then consider how you might plan for that. There are various ways, and if you're working with a financial advisor, they can help you understand that. For you that are over 70 and a half, for example, and have an IRA account, you can do what's called a charitable required minimum distribution. You can take money out of your IRA, and many of you are doing that right now, but instead of paying taxes on it, you can avoid taxes. It goes directly to the church or ministry or charity that you'd like. So there's ways that can be set up. There's charitable trusts. There's a number of ways that can be set up. I would suggest, if this is something that's important to you, you haven't yet thought about it or at least documented it, use this as a springboard to perhaps review your documents, talk with your advisors, and maybe incorporate part of that in your planning. So think about not just, I'm going to give to charity. I get that. But there's various ways, and I guess I'd ask you to think about what's in your heart. I can talk about documents all day, and you see an attorney up here do that. Documents are nothing except for the fact they document and reflect what's in your heart, what's in your mind, and what you want to do. That's where you start with, and then the documents will come. But think about charitable desires. And I'm going to pause after we do this, but let's go ahead. The last thing on this section is the list. You that are executors and have been, you know what you have to do is come up with an estate inventory. Wouldn't it be helpful if the person that was deceased had everything lined up in a spreadsheet? Documenting the values, documenting account numbers, and even personal assets, collectibles, jewelry. Now I'm going to make a guess here, but I'm going to ask you all, how many of you have spreadsheets or some kind of documentation of that in some form right now? That's what I thought. Quite a few of you. Like a lot of the clients we work with, they come from an engineering background, they're very analytical, and they've got that. So see, you might be all the way there right now. But think about that. And I'm going to ask you to think of several numbers. As you do that, you're going to come up with a estate value. Another estate value, hopefully, of everything, it's going to change. Give you three numbers. One number is the new federal estate maximum you can pass on to beneficiaries without estate tax. Anybody know what that is? Hey, shout it out. 6 million. Actually, it's 5.6 million. Pretty good. Pretty good. By the way, if you have a certain, some are saying, I don't have that much. And if you do a proper trust strategy, you could actually double that. So 11.2. Someone said that too. But how many of you know that Washington State has an estate tax? How many know that? Okay. Anybody want to venture a guess, or do you know what that number is? $2,193,000. So think about that. And by the way, anyone know what that percentage is once you exceed that? 19. No, actually, okay, great. I heard 40, I heard 19. It's actually 40% at the federal level. So anything above 5.6 is 40%. It escalates up to 55%. State level, it starts at 15. It's roughly 15% up to 20. But if you think about that, that's additive to the federal. And some of you might not trigger the federal. I got to believe that some of you would certainly trigger the state. So let me give you one more number. $15,000. Anyone know what that number is?
That's what you could give away.
Thank you. I wish I had a present I could give to you. She said, that's what you could give away. In 2018, they increased it to $15,000. You can give away $15,000 to anybody you want. That's $15,000 per person. So you have two per year. Thank you. Thank you. So you have two people, husband and wife, gifting the maximum amount to maybe daughter and son-in-law. How much can you give? $60,000. 15 for each of you to the daughter, 15 for each of you to the son-in-law. So what I'm trying to do is give you some idea of some of the numbers. Now, I don't know where you all are at, but hopefully this kind of triggers some things to think about. Well, I got to think about that. I got to talk with my husband or wife, or talk with my kids, or talk with my advisors about some of these areas. So think about listing assets and liabilities. What we've talked about is really thinking about, so far, talking about your documenting your personal information, reviewing or creating your estate documents, thinking about charity, and then listing your assets and liabilities, and coming up with a net estate. So once you've done that, let's look at how assets pass. Is this, by the way, is this helpful? Yeah. Okay, great. Now, before I go there, I want to make sure, because I always like to gauge my group here. Some of you, I'm going to ask you on a scale of 1 to 5, how I'm communicating. 1 means, you're way over my head, I don't understand anything. 5 means I'm getting it 100%. So how many are at a 1? How many are at 4 or 5? Perfect. How many are at 2 or 3? Okay, good. I'm not going to ask about the ones. But my hope is that we're able to kind of give you new information or verify some additional information that you have. So, question for you, folks. Assets pass. You all probably have retirement accounts like IRAs, you may have annuities, you may have life insurance. So, another client example, Mary. Mary passed away. I'm sorry, it was George. So Mary is involved. So George passes away. Mary is George's first wife. And as George passes away, he wants to leave all of his assets to his kids. So what he did is he carefully adjusted his will, made his kids his beneficiary, but you know what he forgot to do? Forgot to change his IRA beneficiary, and it was still Mary. Remember, his will said everything goes to the kids. The IRA says a part of it, everything goes to Mary. What did the IRA go to, Mary or the kids? Mary. Take this away from this discussion. Your beneficiaries override or supersede your will. So, thing to think about is, again, an action item you might have is, boy, I better look at that IRA account I got. By the way, what happened in that situation, true story, names are changed to protect the innocent. But true story is Mary was gracious enough to recognize that and actually did it's called disclaimer, disclaimed it and gave it to her kids. So it all worked out well. But George, wasn't careful enough to make that discussion. We don't want that to happen to you. So think about that's beneficiaries. Then we're going to look at ownership. Best way of thinking about this. Let me tell you another error we see folks making. Now remember, beneficiaries relate to IRA accounts, annuities, life insurance. Ownership arrangements really represent bank account, savings account, car, title, any brokerage account. So you can have joint ownership, you can have individual with power of attorney, individual with transfer on death. Those are different. Let me tell you another situation. And this happened also. Like these are things we deal with actually more than several times. So as you get on in years, you want to make sure one of your kids has the ability to access your bank account, just in case. Right? How many you're in? Yeah, many are in that situation. How many are in that situation? Okay. So if we're not careful, we could go down to the bank or the credit union, the ECU or whatever credit union you go to, and bring your oldest child there, and you sit down with the teller or the bank representative, and you then create a joint account. Because you want to make sure that your son or daughter have access to the account as well. You know what you've done? You create a gift. It's ownership. Because what happens if that couple passed away or that person passed away, and the will said distribute everything equally, share and share alike to my 5 kids. You had the beneficiaries all dialed in correctly, 20% each. Then this one account of $100,000 has Mary, the oldest daughter, as joint owner. Yeah, I hear some chuckles out there. Guess what happens to that account? Goes to Mary. So what might be better advice to give to our client that wants to give access and control, but not ownership? What might be a better way of doing that? Co-signer or somehow power of attorney. So she could be a co-signer or power of attorney. See, it still retains ownership, still would transfer via the will, but it gives you the opportunity, if you're in that situation, of having one of your kids or multiple of your kids have access to the account. How many are familiar with what's called a transfer on death? By a show of hands. So think about this. We have clients in this situation too. Very simple estate. We could talk about probate and all that, but let's say we had a client, we have these, a very simple estate. I want to keep things as simple as possible. If I can, I want to avoid the attorney and all that. There's a number of ways you can do that. You can develop a trust and so forth, but let's say it's very simple. And what you could do is you could have everything that's a retirement account transfer to the appropriate beneficiaries free of any probate, free of any legal process. In fact, in our office, we actually do estate transitions for our clients. They sit down with our estate transition advisor, and we actually transfer the whole thing over exactly as the beneficiaries say happens right in our office. But then we've got this bank account, or this mutual fund account, or this stock account. Now, it might be an individual name, if it's the last survivor. It would go according to the will. By the way, when it does that, there's a legal process called probate that we talked about that the will goes through. But let's assume that our client said, I want to keep this as simple as possible. That's all they had. And what you could do, you could create what's called a transfer on death. So you could have your $100,000 bank account, an example, could be in your name, could be with power of attorney or co-signer with one of your kids, and they could designate what's called a TOD, or transfer on death. Also called a POD, payable on death. Neat part about that is, guess what now the bank can do? Or if you're working with an advisor, they could help you do this too. They would transfer it directly to who you want, free of any legal involvement. So think about understanding, and that's why we put the word understanding ownership arrangements. Now, I'd encourage all of you to think through what you've got in place today. Does it meet your expectations or your desires? If it doesn't, my advice to you is seek assistance to be able to understand what you should do. Again, meet with your advisors, talk to each other, meet with your attorney, or handle that on your own, but that's what I would consider doing. I'm going to stop right here for a moment. We're on number 6. We've just got a few more to go. But are there any questions so far? We talked about ownership arrangements, talked about beneficiaries.
Question.
Yes?
I don't quite understand the difference between joint and individual with power of attorney.
Okay.
What's the difference?
Sure. The question was, I don't quite understand the difference between joint and individual with power of attorney. The best way I would explain that is this. Power of attorney is all about giving access and control during your lifetime. Now, what happens when you pass away? What happens to that power of attorney? It stops, right? So what happens then in that case is your power of attorney stops. They don't have control anymore. And then it's almost like you've turned the page. Now what happens is the ownership arrangement. So if you had joint with power of attorney, the power of attorney would have access to your accounts while you're living. And you might have in a joint account, if it was husband and wife, for example, with older son as power of attorney, then what might happen is that would revert to the spouse. So the ownership or the joint or individual refers to what happens at the time of the death, whereas power of attorney is while you're living. Welcome. Yes, ma'am.
Back to item 4 with assets and liabilities.
Yes.
Say you did want to give the $15,000 to a lot of people or whatever.
Right.
Or you listed your jewelry. Where does that go? Like, where do you put that down?
So so the question was, make sure I understand the question. We're talking about assets and liabilities, and we're talking about listing your jewelry and other collectibles. Where does that? And the 15,000,
gifting it.
gifting it. So the question is, if you gifted, for example, jewelries or a piece of art that was worth $15,000, what happens?
No, I mean, they're not getting it till I die. Where is it written down?
Oh, I see. So, good clarification. Thank you for that question. So think about how the $15,000 works. The $15,000 works while you're, and it's really important. I appreciate your question too, because there's certain events and numbers that are appropriate to consider while you're here on this earth, while you're living. The power of attorney, for example, the $15,000. So what that says is you could gift. It could be money, it could be a valuable worth $15,000. While you're living, you can gift that much to any individual you want. At the time of death, you can live as much as you want. And the only thing you'll be aware of is those numbers I talked about with the $2 and $5 million. Yeah.
But you put that in the will, don't you?
So the question is, so you put that in the will. So what you could do with, that would be in your will. You might have, what some attorneys will do is they will go ahead and have an attachment, and you'll have specific bequests. I want my mother's beaded necklace to go to my oldest daughter. But yes, you can document that. Oftentimes what will happen, what I see in real life, really, is that when someone passes away, you've got collectibles. And then what we do, and I'm not there yet, but we have with our clients, I think we've had a family financial meeting We have family financial meetings with our clients. And once all this is tied together, we believe it's very important to communicate your desires to your loved ones in a way that you want to. So what we end up doing, frankly, at our firm is we have a family financial meeting where those things get talked about.
This is before the death?
Before the death. Before the death. And you can look at it any way that you would like. We found, though, at least having some kind of a communication that is appropriate before death really smooths things along a lot. Some of you may not even want to reveal numbers to kids. I get it. We have a lot of clients like that. Some say, you know what, they're going to get it anyway. Let's just show them numbers and let's just. So really what that meeting is all about is being able to, once you get things documented, being able to hopefully smooth the way so when you do finish on this earth, that you've got a smooth runway that is already, they know who the people are involved, your advisors, for example, you've talked about it and they've heard it directly from your mouth. Yes, sir.
If you don't specifically designate IRA beneficiaries, what happens to it?
So if you don't specifically generate IRAs, beneficiaries, what happens? It reverts to the will. But so having reverts to the will, let me tell you what happens. Because remember, we have to think about taxes too. So, that's a serious questions here. Let's assume husband and wife, assume wife has a IRA, she passes away, husband's beneficiary, what happens to the IRA? He gets it. Does he pay any taxes on it? No. And then it reverts to his IRA, and he's at over 70 and a half. What happens? What does he have to do? Take required distributions based on his age. So let's go one step further, and I'm getting to your question here in a moment. Husband and wife, husband passes away, wife gets the IRA, and we don't name a beneficiary. You've got 5 kids. What happens to the IRA? It gets distributed based on the will to 5 kids. There you, thank you, sir. Can you say that louder, please? So yeah, gentleman says it gets to the people you want, but what do those 5 kids have to do? Pay taxes right away. The IRS allows you to pay them over 5 years. But so the point is it will get to the people that you want. But let's, on the other hand, say our same situation. Now we've designated the 5 kids as beneficiaries after the second death. Y'all follow me? Is it making sense? So what happens, sir, in that case? Goes to the 5 beneficiaries, just as it would under the will. You still have to pay taxes on it. But what happens is they can put in place, I see Dave just smile, they can put in place what's called a stretch IRA. So they can stretch the IRA over their lifetime. So they could do what you're doing at 70 and a half, and maybe they're 50 or 60 or 70. See, they still have to pay taxes on it, but the IRS allows you to defer taxes. So what you want to do is name beneficiaries. Again, for education purposes, consider how it integrates with your will. Talk to your attorney, but generally you name beneficiaries. Primary beneficiaries, if you're married, husband and wife. Secondary beneficiaries, which would be kids or loved ones. Take one more question, then I've got a few more minutes. And yes, sir.
Being the, excuse me, the state of Washington's a community property state, so you have to be careful how you have your bank account set up, right?
You do.
Yeah, because if not, you can't fund it with your credit trust.
So, but you're like in phase 2 of all this. So what the gentleman said, Washington's a community property state. And many of you might have, and I'll try not to lose some of you here, many of you might have what's called a credit shelter or bypass trust in your will. And if you've talked to an attorney, you know what that is. If you don't, what that means is it allows you, if you've got a certain asset base, to actually double that state exemption, which is $2.193 million, or double the federal exemption. What it really means is a trust gets funded at the time of the first death. Now, then you want to work with your advisor to understand what gets funded. But what happens in the state of Washington, as a community property state, I would just say you've got to be careful how you have ownership arrangements. Get some color here. Ownership arrangements if you've got a bypass trust. And again, it would be too deep to go into the details of that, but you're correct, sir. So, we're on number 6. Remember I said One place, easy to find. One place, easy to find. By the way, and then one more story here. We have, think about all that. By the way, what I'd also add on there, I'd add the stock certificates. Some of you may have stock certificates laying around. You may have them at what's called a transfer agent, like a computer shares. Some of you may have savings bonds. But once you locate your important documents, we believe one of the areas that we've seen folks very interested in is consolidating and simplifying. So we do a lot with our clients. What that means, I'll give you a great example of that too, of someone that didn't. Kelly is our estate transition specialist on our team. We had a client that was referred to us by an attorney. Her husband passed away, very sweet lady. We worked with her. It turns out that he had 8 shares of 8 different companies, 3 transfer agencies, 2 brokerage accounts, and 3 IRAs. Now, we sorted through all that. But what I would suggest is that if you list your documents and you know where the documents are, one idea that you might want to consider to finish well is consolidate when you can. Think about that. So my only message here is consolidate when you can. Consolidate when you can. I'm going to get this going the right way yet. So 8 and 9, I'm going to suggest when you think about who your durable power of attorney is, who your executor, who your beneficiaries are. Let me give you an acronym as well. Just something real quick to remember. And the acronym is simply CAW. When you think through who you have in these roles now, make sure they are C, competent. Things change. Kids change. A, make sure they're available. If they're over in Florida and you're in Washington, make sure they know that they're in that role and they're going to be available. A W, make sure they're willing. By the way, part of the reason why we have these family financial meetings is we'll talk about who the roles are. Oldest son says, I don't want to do that. You better find out beforehand. The last 2. We're going to hear about prepaid arrangements later. As we think about that, a family love letter. It's been called a number of things. This is not about a will. It's not about the documents. It's about a personal letter that you just have in an envelope. It says, open this after I die. Tell you another story. It's a very personal story. This is a young man who said in his love letter, he conveyed it actually verbally, but he says, I want to have, at my death, I want to have a celebration. This, by the way, was in 1999. It wasn't, you hear about celebrations of life now. But this was a young man who had a deep faith in God, faith in Jesus Christ. And he said, I want my service to be a tribute to what the Lord has done in my life. I'm naming my pallbearers. He called each and every person into his room on his deathbed and said, I want you to be my pallbearer, you to be my pallbearer. He said, I want everybody dressed in white, not black. He said, because I think the best is yet to come, I want to give everybody a fork when they come in. I want to serve dessert when this is over. Because we all know the best thing in a meal is dessert, and that comes last. So I don't need to say any more, but you know what I'm talking about. Name your trusted advisors. Let people know who you're working with, contact information. And now your homework. Your homework is this. 2 things. One is, we're going to call it a Finish Well notebook. So remember, one of my goals was to encourage you, empower you to take action. So what a finished well notebook is, and it can be anything that you want, but it's simply a collection of the documents I just spoke about. So gather your vital information, document and organize, review and update annually. And you know one of the best gifts that you can give to your loved ones, your spouse, your family right now? Is exactly what I'm talking about. Exactly what I'm talking about. That's one part of your homework. Second part is communicate. Communicate. You know, the questions that we get when folks are asked about this, clients will say, well, who do I communicate to? What do I communicate? When do I do it? And how do I do it? It's pretty awkward. Many of you are working with a financial advisor, some are, some aren't, some with other professionals. I'd say get your advisor involved. Say, look, hopefully they're involved in an ongoing basis in your planning, but at one of your meetings, say, look, this is what I like. If they haven't suggested it, what I like to do is arrange a meeting. We call these family financial meetings. We do it at our firm. And what I would also suggest, if you're engaging professional advisors, they should be involved in helping you with your transition when it happens. By the way, it wouldn't be helping you, helping your spouse, helping your kids. What does that mean? 3 things. First of all, it means, for the advisor now, it should be a financial, legal coordination. It means coordinating with the attorney. If you've already worked with attorneys before, and many of you have, you know they charge a lot of money, and you don't want to involve them as much. And sometimes they're really busy, and they may not give you words in the language that you can understand. Legal coordination. Second of all, what an advisor in this area should do, or I consider having them do, executor guidance. Many times folks are executives 1, 2, and 3 times in their life. That's it. They should be able to guide you. You're also involved and engaged in other parts of your life, executor guidance. And finally, the third component of what we consider estate transition support is beneficiary education. If your kids just got the IRA and no one told them about the stretch, they might take it, put it, I don't know, take a trip, buy the new car they wanted. So I would encourage you to think about communication. Who, what, when, and how. And we'll have time for probably a few questions at the end here. But we're going to give you a gift too. But I want to just wrap up right now. I've said a lot in the last half of what we've done. Are there any questions that come to mind before I step off the stage for a moment? Anything that comes to mind that needs clarification? Yes, sir. Yes, right behind the back there, then you. Yes.
Where does revocable trust come in?
So revocable living trust. An estate plan is built on typically a will or a revocable living trust, also called a living trust. Some of you may have those. I'm trying to think of how to say this in 3 minutes. What I would suggest is this, is living trusts can be excellent vehicles to facilitate the distribution of an estate, particularly if you have more complex estate, if you have property in other states, because you go through probate in the state where the property is domiciled at, not where you are, your kids, the property. So revocable living trusts take the place of a will. Some of you have them, some don't. The main benefit of a revocable living trust is not that it avoids estate tax. It's not that. The main benefit is it avoids what? Probate. Avoids probate. Now, in certain states, probate's really important to avoid. States like California, where probates, because remember, probate's determined by the state. Probate's very expensive. It's time-consuming. Attorneys charge a lot of money. About 80% of the clients, we have clients in 30 states. About 80% of the clients in California typically have living trusts. In Washington, is a probate process simple or complex? It's always complex. Is it relatively simple or complex? Relatively simple. So in Washington state, we see roughly, with very straightforward, no out-of-state property, roughly 80% of clients do not have a revocable living trust, they have a will. Because it's less expensive, usually easier to administer. And the probate process in Washington state is actually fairly straightforward, fairly simple, and it can be pretty cost-effective. And I think we had one question. Yes, sir.
The stretch IRA, that would be up to the beneficiary to do that.
Yes, great point. So think about this. Great, thank you, sir. Stretch IRA up to the beneficiary. But guess what you could write in your love letter? In your love letter, you can simply say, you know, your mom and I worked very hard for this money, and we're thankful you're inheriting it. We would love this to be a gift to you, but a gift to help you in your retirement. We would encourage you to consider the options that are presented to you, and we'd encourage you to consider the stretch IRA. You know, the power of that love letter. You don't know what that, I mean, you can imagine. You know, a child opens it up and sees this. My goodness, it's powerful. I think, as one more question, I think I had one back. I'll take this one and this one. Yes, sir.
Define an executor, because we have an executor who is a banker, but she's known her family for 20 years. She's like a member of the family. So define to people what an executor is for the will.
Sure. The question was define what an executor is. Think about executor. An executor is the one that after death, remember not before death, after death, because the executor doesn't know anything about power of attorney, after death, executes, hence executor, executes the instructions that are contained in the will of the decedent, the one who died. The executor is the one who contacts the attorney. The executor is the one that works with any advisors in the process. The executor is the one who has to provide an accounting of what's been done to the court system or probate system. We've seen family members be executors. We've seen other professionals be executor. I would encourage you, be careful here, I would encourage you to have someone that you trust. Oftentimes it's a family member. Professionals can serve as executors. I know we are, for example, prohibited from serving as executors because we're fiduciaries and there's a conflict of interest there. Just make sure it's the one that you feel is appropriate in that process, and if it's someone that's a professional, find out if they're going to, executor, by the way, can, in most wills, they can charge for the services as well. Okay, let's go one more over here.
Some of us back here are still looking for your handout.
Oh, so the handout, so if you did not get a handout, okay, got extra. Thank you, I appreciate that, Dave. Thank you, and what we're going to do is, I'm going to give that one to you. What we can do is, if you can give these two gentlemen in the back, my associates, if you can give, either y'all can make a copy, but what we're going to do is we'd love to send you one. So if you can give your name, if you didn't get one, give your name and your address right here, we'll mail it to you. I'm sorry about that. We didn't expect as many folks. So the parting thought, parting gift I would suggest to you is we have for you a gift. And each of you are going to get this binder. One per couple, please. And those that, by the way, got limited supplies. Those that didn't get the handouts, please let Tim or Adam know because we want to get you these first. We have a limited supply. But what these are, you know, on our website, and please feel free to go to paulreed.com, we have recommended books. And these are ones that we've screened, we've scrubbed, we've looked at. And this is one of the best documents I found that is able to be your finish well notebook. What it does, it's tabbed, it's indexed, and it's very straightforward. Big print, lots of lines. I like that, guys, too. And it also has places for all the information I talked about. So with our compliments and thanks, this is our gift to you, so you all can make this a gift to your families and loved ones. So if they're on the back as you leave, be sure and see Tim or Adam. Thank you so much, folks. It's been my pleasure.